Canada.
O Canada, our home and native land, true patriot love in all thy sons command. With glowing hearts we see thee rise, the true North strong and free. From far and wide, O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. God keep our land glorious and free. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee.
Thank you. Item 2.3, please join me for a moment of silent reflection. Thank you. Item 2.4 is the adoption of the open session agenda. Councillor Richardson, I believe that's on yours.
Thank you. Adoption of open session agenda for October 22nd, 2019, moved by myself, Councillor Richardson, seconded by Councillor Vale, that the agenda of the open session of the regular council meeting of Tuesday, October 22nd, 2019 be adopted as circulated with the following amendments. Additions, bylaws by consent, item 13.1.10. By bylaw to authorize the conveyance of municipal-owned property known as 8 Francis Street, Fenelon Falls. Addition, matters closed for close. Item 16.1, a bylaw to authorize an application for approval of appropriate land. Thank you.
Thank you. All in favor? That's passed. Is there any disclosure of pecuniary interest on today's open session agenda? Seeing none, notices and information by members of council and staff. Is there anyone on council has anything they would like to announce? Councillor Helmsley?
I may be premature, Mr. Mayor, but Fenelon Falls Remembrance Day. Remembrance Day is coming up everywhere, I know. And the candlelight service on the Thursday night will start at 7 o'clock on Water Street, march to the cenotaph, and then there'll be a placing of the candles. So I just wanted to let council and any members of the community know if they would like to take part in that. It's quite a sight to see and quite a ceremony. So it's been going on for a number of years and well worth coming out and seeing.
Agree. We will be there. Anyone else want to announce anything? Councillor O'Reilly?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. There's a Halloween party, speaking of getting towards the end of the month, Saturday, October 26th, presented by the Lindsay Lions Club at Lindsay Exhibition Grounds. Last Sunday, we had our Lindsay District Sports Hall of Fame at the Armory, and over 300 people attended. It was a great turnout. The 25th Annual Dream Ball will be held this year at our Lindsay Armories on Saturday, November 16th. This is Community Health Centre Week in Ontario. It's also Small Business Week from October 21st to the 25th. There's a number of events and seminars. There's a breakfast at the Admiral Inn on Thursday, and the Innovation Awards are on Friday at the Lindsay Golf and Country Club between 10 and 2. And then recently, Corby Purdy, one of our employees at the engineering department, and his wife Sarah, they participated in the Chattanooga Ironman's contest in Chattanooga, Tennessee. And there's a number of male participants, but his wife Sarah completed it as well, and I believe she's the first woman in City of Kawartha Lakes to complete an Ironman triathlon.
That's great. I was going to go, but I had a conflict in my schedule, so I didn't, couldn't make it this time. Any other announcements? Councillor Vail?
This past Saturday, the newly formed Little Britain Community Association held their first annual Harvest Moon Festival. It was very well attended by the community. It began with a tractor parade about 6 p.m. where they had over 30 or 40 different tractors of all varying ages, sizes, and colors, followed by a sold-out dinner at the community center and dance. And just Remembrance Day notes, there'll be a Remembrance Day service on Sunday, November the 10th, church service at Bolsover Presbyterian Church at 10 a.m., followed by a parade and cenotaph service at the Woodville Legion at 12:30, and then Remembrance Day services at Oakwood Cenotaph and Kirkfield Cenotaph on Monday, November the 11th at 11 a.m.
Thank you. Sorry, it's not telling me who wants to speak next, so you're going to have to raise your hands till I figure this out. Councillor Seymour Fagan, go ahead.
Hi, you may have noticed that our paramedic, Chief Andrew, is sporting pink epaulets. So Councillor Richardson and myself would like to challenge staff and council in supporting our paramedics with the cause that they are doing. So Francine Scott, who is one of the paramedics, has spearheaded the Pink Epaulette program, where they purchase and wear the pink epaulets, and $20 of the $20 for the proceeds go right to Ross Memorial Diagnostic Imaging for Breast Health. So Tracy and I are going to come around to council and senior staff and collect some money afterwards.
You go get them. I believe I already... Yes. Okay. Thank you for mentioning that. Councillor Richardson, go ahead.
Thank you. And this past Sunday, we opened up the Bethany Fire Hall, grand opening, and it was very well received by the public, and it was a wonderful event. I also, on another note, there's a local young man that's just being diagnosed with acute myeloid leukemia in our community, and he's going to be in sick kids for 6 to 8 months. And in 24 hours, I want to commend my community because we've rented a hall, got a DJ, have tickets printed, and over 35 prizes already donated. So his fundraiser is going to be on November 23rd at the Manvers Arena. So I just wanted to put that out there. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone, other members of council? Councillor Ashmore?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a few announcements. I'd like to congratulate Halliburton Kawartha Lakes Brock Member of Parliament Jamie Schmale for his re-election last night. Congratulations. I'd like to thank staff and council for approving the new four-way stop at the corner of Peace Road and Sturgeon between Omemee and Downeyville. I'd also like to thank our staff, Joe Kelly, Mike Farquhar, and Director Rojas for getting this to become a reality, and the people really appreciate that. Thanks again. And also, thanks, the people expressed many thanks for on Walmart Shores Road and McGregor Drive for getting a new you said that, nice, life cycle extension program. And it was done in the weekend, excellent weather, and I appreciate staff and Royale Paving and Dufferin and our staff for being there, getting that together and having that completed. On October 27th, at the Downeyville Parish Hall, there will be the annual fish fry, and that's on Sunday, October 27th from 4 to 7. Presently, there is a Rogers Communications 75-meter tower that's being erected at 1988 Heights Road. Hasn't been erected yet, but if any members of the public have any questions, to contact Spectra Site Inc., care of Laura Sterling in Newmarket at 905-251-8847. On November 7th, Mum's Mini Mart, I'd like to congratulate the Patel family and their official opening of the LCBO and beer store. That'll be November 3rd at 2 p.m. in Dunsford, so congratulations to them. And on November 8th, Friday, I'll be attending the Remembrance Dinner at the Omemee Legion, and on the 10th, there will be a parade from the Legion to the Cenotaph where they'll be laying of wreaths, and I'll be honored in laying the wreath for City Kawartha Lakes that day at 1 p.m. That's good.
Thank you. Any other members of council? Seeing none. Any members of staff? Seeing none, we'll move on. Council minutes, 5.1, that the minutes of the September 24th, 2019 regular council meeting be received and adopted. You get a mover and a seconder. Councillor Yeo and Elmsley. All in favor? That's passed. We don't have any deputations today or presentations, so we'll move right into Committee of the Whole. That the minutes of the October 8th Committee of the Whole meeting be received and the recommendations included in section 8.3 of the agenda, save and accept 8.3.8, 8.3.10, and 8.3.12 from Committee of the Whole. All other recommendations be adopted. Can I get a mover for that? Councillor O'Reilly, seconded by Councillor Seymour Fagan. Are there all in favor? That's passed. First extraction was Councillor Ashmore, 838, the farm tax ratio review report. Go ahead.
Yes, thank you. All I was asking was that this be referred to the Agriculture Advisory Committee for review. That's what I'd like, please. And then they can come back. I just wanted them to actually look at the document and give comments back. That's all I was asking for, this report. CW 2019-180.
So that the report Corp 219-026 farm tax ratio review be received and referred to the Agriculture Advisory Committee. What are you asking them to review?
Well, the OFA.
Give an opinion on it?
Yeah, just their comments on it, because I talked to Kelly Maloney and she was interested, and she thinks that it should come to their table and just be discussed anyways, just for discussion.
Okay,
That's all.
that's the motion. Seconder? Councillor Elmsley, you'll second that. Any comments, questions? All in favor? That's passed. 8310 is the next extraction, was Councillor Ashmore, the alternative financing for capital and operating pressures.
Thank you. Just an addition here to the wording here. On the third paragraph, I'd just like to add 4 words after savings bonds, quote, and or equity shares. And also on the bottom, the back paragraph, the last paragraph, I could change it from Q3 to Q4 2020 or Q1 2021. It can be pushed off further. I have no problem with that, because I don't want to burden staff with this report when we're doing budgets.
Okay, so let's read it then so everybody's clear that the memorandum from Councillor Ashmore regarding alternative financing for capital and operating pressures be received, that staff be directed to study alternative sources of funding for Kawartha Lake's capital and operating needs, that staff explore the creation of Kawartha Lake's savings bonds and or equity shares as a method of increasing our capital funding, and that staff report back to council by the end of Q1 2021 with alternatives and additions to the current sources of funding for capital and operating budgets. Is that?
That's great, thanks.
Okay, get a seconder. Councillor O'Reilly, you want to speak to it or any discussion? Councillor O'Reilly, any questions? All in favor? That's passed. Thank you. And the last extraction from Committee of the Whole is 8312, extracted by Councillor Dunn, the memo regarding the full winter maintenance for the cul-de-sac accessing Francis Street in Fenelon Falls. No motion at all? No. Okay. Councillor Elmsley?
Move it as printed.
Okay, that the October 8th, 2019 memorandum from yourself regarding full winter maintenance for the cul-de-sac accessing Francis Street, Fenelon Falls be received. That the cul-de-sac encompassing properties 202 to 210 receive full winter maintenance for 2019-2020 winter season. That staff report back to council at the end of Q1 2020 with background regarding this cul-de-sac and recommendations for municipal maintenance moving forward. So moved. Seconder, Councillor O'Reilly. You want to speak to it? Councillor O'Reilly? No? Any questions, comments? All in favor? Councillor Dunn, go ahead, sorry. Well, it's kind of wonky, so I'll just ask you to back it up with your hand if you would. Sorry, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm going to vote against it, and I'm going to ask for a recorded vote, mainly because we seem to be acting in a very inconsistent manner. We turn down some roads, we approve some roads. I just think we have to have a consistency here. We turned down McGuire's Beach a month ago. we're going to approve this one. I don't have an issue with providing the plowing. That's not my issue. It's just that I would love to see some sort of consistency from council.
Public Works, you have a comment?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor, this is just a little bit of background, I guess. Can you throw those up, Madam Clerk? This is just some information for council to consider in this request. So there are 3 photos. I don't know if I can get to them all. So there's the first. This is the general location where it is on Francis Street in Fenelon Falls. This is an aerial photography of the same thing. If you look right kind of in the center of the screen there, you can see where the laneway comes off of that. That's a zoom in of the location. So this is this is the section that's being discussed right now. When the road was realigned back in the 80s, Francis Street moved away, and that section of road became effectively a shared driveway or a cul-de-sac, whatever you want to call it. Maintenance should have stopped on that roadway back in the 80s. It hasn't. So we have been providing some general maintenance to that, what I would deem to be a shared driveway. It's not an independent road name. It doesn't have a stop control. It's literally a driveway to those 4 individual properties. And the reason it's shared like that is because of the grades coming off, and you can see a bit of a guide rail on Francis. There's no way for them to access straight out to Francis. So it is effectively a common shared driveway, in our opinion. So we reviewed the case, reviewed the file, and then provided them with some documentation that we were going to be ceasing maintenance of the shared driveway. Residents have since come forward and discussed with Deputy Mayor Elmsley, and who has concerns with changing that level of service. And again, we're fine with that approach if that's where council wants to go, and we'll provide some more detail in a report in the new year.
Okay. Any questions? I'll get you to sum up, Councillor Elmsley. Councillor Yeo, go ahead.
Thank you, and through you. I've had a couple of these crop up in my area, and I was under the opinion that we were not discussing any cancellation of service or anything until we had that report on road segments back, which is due in a couple of years or something. And these things keep popping up.
Yeah, so through you, Mr. Mayor, that's correct. In my mind, this isn't a road. This is a driveway. So that's where we've distinguished the difference for this particular case. This is not a Francis Crescent or a Stubbs Street or whatever you want to call it. It is literally a driveway that the only reason they're not directly out to Francis Street and maintaining their own driveways is because of the geographics in the area that they can't run their driveways out. It's no different than the driveway at 212, but it just can't be on their frontage.
Okay, and thank you for that and follow-up. So I realize we're going to get information on the end of Q1, but you said this road was realigned. So who owns that shared driveway?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, again, no different than the 212 or 214. The section of road where that's on is on municipal road allowance. It's the apron of their driveway. So if you look at the drive, there's the road. Francis Street wraps around the front of their property. It doesn't show that shared driveway as a separate street or anything. It's literally just again, it's a driveway apron, in our opinion.
Councillor Elmsley, you want to sum up?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I called a cul-de-sac because when the road was realigned, it was left as an orphan. Had we not been doing maintenance on it since the 80s, some 40 years, I might not be taking the position I am now. Were they coming forward and asking for full maintenance and hadn't had it, I would not support that. But the fact that they've had full maintenance for all those years, and as late as August of this year, we worked on a culvert on that road. It is clearly their addresses, they have green numbers that are labeled Francis Street. We own the property. We've been maintaining the property even past the so-called magic date of 2003. So to stop it now, and then we're into a season where are they going to get snow plowing at this time of the year? If they had to get it, they couldn't do it. And most people I talked to in the snow plowing business said, well, we couldn't do it on there anyway because it's owned by the municipality, so we couldn't plow it. So we have people who wouldn't have access to their property for this year. Thus, I wrote the memo to make sure that they got winter control and that staff had an opportunity to bring something back first quarter, and we can discuss it and see where we go with it. But I think the first priority, as far as I'm concerned, is to make sure they have access to their properties over the winter time. So I hope that council will support it. Thank you.
Thank you. Recorded vote requested by Councillor Dunn. Go ahead, Madam Clerk. So the motion? It's as printed that it received full winter maintenance for 2019-2020 and that staff report back in Q1 with some more background information regarding maintenance moving forward.
Councillor Dunn? Councillor O'Reilly?
In favor?
Councillor Seymour Fagan?
In favor.
Councillor Yeo?
In favor?
Councillor Richardson?
In favor?
Councillor Ashmore?
In favor?
Deputy Mayor Elmsley?
In favor?
Councillor Vale?
In favor.
Mayor Latham?
In favor. 8 in favor, 1 opposed. Motion passes. Thank you. So we have one report, or a memo, 841, which was extracted, that the deputation of Ted Comiskey, the mayor of Ingersoll, regarding his request for resolution of support for the Demand the Right coalition requesting municipalities have the right to approve or reject future landfill developments in their communities be received, and that the City of Kawartha Lakes calls upon the Government of Ontario as part of its Made in Ontario Environment Plan to formally entrench the right of municipalities to approve or reject landfill projects. And I would just add that a copy be sent to the Mayor of Ingersoll to follow up. If you'll move that, Councillor Seymour Fagan, seconded by Councillor Dunn. Any questions, comments? All in favor? That passes. Thank you. Item 9 is the Planning Advisory Committee. Are there any extractions from the planning minutes? Seeing none, Councillor O'Reilly, will you?
Them as printed?
As printed, seconded by Councillor Vale. Questions, comments, all in favor? That's passed. Thank you. Consent. You guys are moving so fast, you're getting ahead of me here. 1 sec. Consent. So the consent agenda extractions I have so far are 1011, extracted by myself, which is the cooperative request for proposal, the collection and transportation of waste and recyclables. I have 1016, an application to remove the holding provision for the Village of Omemee zoning bylaw 1993-15, Currat, extracted by Councillor Ashmore. I have 1018, development charges reserve reconciliation, extracted by Councillor Dunn. And I have 10110, the proposed 2020 lease agreement between the Dunsford Community Centre and the City of Kawartha Lakes regarding the library, extracted by Councillor Ashmore. Are there any further extractions for the consent agenda? Seeing none, Councillor Ashmore, I believe you have that? No, for the consent. Put your microphone on, please. Thank you.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor O'Reilly, that all the proposed resolutions shown in section 10.1 and 10.2, save and accept, 10.16, and look at the other one. 10.11. 10.16. 10.18. And 10.110. Apologize for not writing that down. And adopted by council in that order that they appear in the agenda and sequentially numbered.
Sorry, did you have a seconder? Councillor O'Reilly?
Councillor O'Reilly, yeah.
Any questions, comments? All in favor? That's passed. First extraction is 1011. It's a cooperative request for the proposal, collection, and transportation of waste and recyclables. There's some information that I feel council should be shared with regarding this proposal, but it is proprietary and confidential information. So I'm going to make the suggestion that we move 1011 to after closed session and make it item 16.2. And then in closed session, we'll add an item to the agenda, a verbal report in closed session to get a bit more information, and then we'll come back and open and deal with this if you're okay with that. Councillor Helmsley, you'll move that? Seconder, Councillor Dunn, thank you. Any questions? All in favor? That's passed. 10.16 is application to remove the holding provision for the Village of Omemee zoning bylaw. Councillor Ashmore, your extraction?
Yep, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a bit of a question and through you to City Solicitor. This particular property, if you look at it here, if you have your map here, number 88 is owned by people across the road and a business, and they have expressed an interest in purchasing the property at the corner of King Street West and Ski Hill Road. So there was correspondence that I sent about an inquiry to this on October 8th, and the following is a sketch of the city-owned land in Omemee at the corner of Highway 7 and King Street. The people that own 88 are asking if they can purchase this property. The person inquiring is the following. We can follow up with them. I don't need to list their name and number, but they own property beside it. So what I'm kind of concerned about is if you look at this here, you've got, you have a right-of-way here that this subject land is trying to access, but what if these people buy this corner lot? Are they still able to buy this corner lot? By approving this today, are we inhibiting these people from buying this corner lot? Because they expressed an interest in buying it. So, in other words, they're going to be landlocked, or they're not going to have the ability to use this as their hookup. So what I'm saying, I guess, is if we could just put this off to staff and then come back at the next meeting.
Well, let's try and get you some clarification,
Okay.
because I know the developer's anxious to move ahead, and I'm not sure that has a whole lot to do with the removing the holding provision, but I don't know, who's planning report, director? You comment? Somebody's got a comment. Not me.
So just to be clear, we're talking about the corner lot on King Street and Ski Hill Road. That's correct. So I'm not seeing the concern with access to that. It looks like they would have access either on King Street or Ski Hill Road, so they're not landlocked. I'm just wondering what the concern is.
So is your concern, sorry, Councillor, that the access point that you see currently there is not going to affect any kind of access to that lot, correct?
See, what it is that they wanted to buy that access. They expressed an interest prior to this being printed that they would buy that access. So they're wanting to buy that city-owned property. They've expressed interest several years. There's correspondence, there's a trail, a paper trail, going back at least 4 or 5, 6, 7 years of these people trying to purchase that city-owned property. So I'm just not sure why we're going to approve this.
I just think we're dealing with two totally separate things. Sale of that city-owned property has no effect, unless I'm wrong, has no effect on the holding provision on this property whatsoever. This is to gain access off of Ski Hill Road, correct?
Yes, and just to be clear, the access that comes, the long sort of panhandle that comes off of King Street West is access and owned by the property in behind. It's not a municipally owned piece of property, so that's up to that property owner to determine whether they want to sell that access. The proposal is for this particular property is to access off of Ski Hill Road, but I'm not aware that they're looking to get rid of at this point the access off of King Street.
So does the decision we're making today, removing the holding provision, have any effect on the sale, future sale, possible sale of that corner lot?
No, not in my opinion, no.
Councillor?
Just one more question. So through you to Director Marshall. So the people, if they want to buy, the people that own 88 who wish to buy that, not just the lot on the corner, but if they want to buy the access, then they can't buy the city-owned property even though it's been deemed surplus. It was deemed surplus. There's paper trail saying that it was. But now we're indicating that that's an important access to this lot severed right here. So that's the confusing part. I never was aware, they were never aware that there was an actual use for that property. That's just my,
I think currently that's the only access to that property, but you're saying it's owned by that property owner in the shaded area. It's nothing to do with the city. So the H, by removing the H, it's allowing them to put an access point off Ski Hill Road. If they choose at some point to sell that extra access piece leading out to King Street to one of the abutting property owners, that has nothing to do with the city, correct?
That's correct.
so this easement, if I'm not using the right word, but this narrow strip here, who owns that right now?
It's privately owned by the property in behind. So that panhandle connects and is owned by the property in behind.
Okay, well, that's what it is, but I was told by the owners that that was owned by the city, but,
It has nothing to do with your concern about the sale of that corner lot. This should have nothing to do with that. There's no reason to hold this up for that. Somebody move it as printed? Councillor Ashmore, you'll move it? As printed? O'Reilly, Councillor O'Reilly, you'll second it. Thank you. Any further questions? All in favor? That's passed. Thank you. Next extraction is 1018, the Development Charges Reserve Reconciliation. Councillor Dunn?
Yeah, I have no problem with the motion, I think. I might have a follow-up motion when it's after. I just need some information. I read this.
You'll move it as printed? We'll get
move
it
it
on the
as printed
table?
for now,
Okay, get a seconder. Councillor Vale, go ahead, sir.
Okay, through you to the treasurer, I guess, or the director. The numbers on the bottom. We have $11 million in development charges booked. Is that a good way to say that? Where we have a potential income of $11 million booked? Like, I'm just confused by the numbers, and I just sort of need, or if you just want to give us an overview of it, and then I can probably have a more, I'll probably have a better question for you if you just want to run it through.
Sure, through the mayor. So I assume you're looking at the table on page 3 of that report. So the DC funding corrections to approved capital projects, that column is indicating that there were $11.1 million worth of capital projects that were not funded appropriately historically. So they were funded likely from capital reserve, from water reserves, sewer reserves, and they should have been funded from development charges. They should have been growth-related projects. The next column, which is unfunded 2014-2015 DC rate phase-in of $2.3 million, that's indicating that when the current bylaw was imposed, we had a phase-in, and so anybody that paid development charges and paid the lower rate, we need to reconcile and pay back the DC reserve for that amount. So that totals the 2.3. The unfunded DC exemptions of almost $3 million, those are development charges, whether they're statutory or city-decided exemptions. Again, under the DC Act, if the city puts exemptions in place, we have to keep the DC reserve whole, so we have to fund those exemptions from somewhere else. So that's that $3 million almost. And then the foregone interest is just simply a calculation. Had we done this reconciliation or made these transfers at the point in time, the DC reserve would have either earned interest or incurred negative interest. So that's just a mathematical calculation that's being done. And then the total, the net, is the corrective. So of the $11 million roughly of DC projects that were funded from the capital reserve, should have been funded from DCs, we have to take off all the things that were not funded out of DCs that should have been. The net result is the $7 million.
Okay. I guess what I'm concerned about then is column number 3, the unfunded DC exemptions. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but the way I read that column is, so when we approved social housing and we waived the DC charges, that's where that would fall under. Okay, so when we pay the $2.9 million, we find, I'm assuming that $2.9 million comes out of the tax base. Okay, so when we pay that, are we up to date?
Yeah, your chart says 209 to 219, so I'm assuming that's reconciling it for the
So
last 10 years.
Then we're good. So at that point, everything else is a fresh DC waiver.
Correct.
Okay. The interest, same thing. So we're right up to date again. And that's interest that we should have been collecting, and or if we didn't collect it, we should have been charging it back to the DCs to increase the DCs.
Yeah, so if the DC is in a positive balance, it earns interest. If it's in a negative balance, then it works as if we'd gone out and brought in debt, so it pays interest.
Okay. So when we do this, the money is coming out of current taxes for 2020? Is that what our plan is? Or is there money sitting there in reserves already that we're just going to transfer? Like, where's the money coming from, I guess is what my question is.
So in this particular chart, there's more money, the numbers that are a positive need to be transferred from DCs to the capital reserve or the water reserve or the sewer reserve. If the number's in a negative, then the money goes the other way. So the net is that we need to transfer $7 million from development charges to the combination of the capital reserve, the water reserve, and the sewer
That
reserve.
would be a good thing. Okay, all right, I'm glad with that. I'm happy. I made the right motion. And I will have a follow-up motion after this one's passed.
So I have a quick question. So when we do our new DC bylaw, theoretically in January of 2020, this, as Councillor Dunn mentioned, is sort of bringing us totally up to date. So the fund is where it needs to be as far as previous adjustments and allocations and interest payments and everything else. So we're actually in 2020 with the new bylaw, we're starting fresh and clean with no history behind us to try to sort out. Okay, thank you. Who seconded that? Did you want to speak to it? Any questions, further questions on the report? All in favor? That's passed. Follow up, Councillor Dunn?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As a follow-up motion, going forward, when we waive DC charges for certain things, just like just a brief report coming to council, even as information, so that I know when we waive them on our next social housing development project is probably where it's going to happen, that in fact we're taking out $200,000 or whatever that we would have received, because I would think going forward it would be a better thing to deal with it on an annual basis, so we don't fall where we're falling, that's all. So does that kind of work?
Well, that's a pretty wordy motion.
I know it is. I know it is.
What about, so if
I
any...
didn't understand enough of the
any
motion I made.
Any DC incentive moving forward has the financial implications of that are brought to council at the same time? Is that, I think, what you're...
That's what I'm trying to get at, yeah.
Does that work? Okay. I think that's a good motion. Thank you. All in favor, or seconder? Councillor Yeo. All in favor? That's Pat. Sorry. No, it's okay. Got to be quicker than that, man. Okay. Okay, where are we? We're through our consent. 10110, thank you, is extracted by Councillor Ashmore, is the proposed lease agreement between Dunsford Community Centre and the City of Kawartha Lakes. Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, I'll move it as printed, but I just wanted to see if this could go back to the library board, because...
Let's get a seconder for your motion as printed first. Second by Councillor Seymour Fagan. Go ahead.
So if you look at this here, like we're entering into a 3-year agreement, which is fine, but the facility is only open 3 days a week, 12 hours a week, so it's 168 hours a week, and this place is only open 12 hours a week. I just think the community needs to open up. We need a few more hours. You know, the facility's there, we're locking in for 3 years. I'm just wondering if we can go back to the library board and maybe they could look at increasing the hours just slightly, because 12 hours a week really, I don't think cuts it, because, you know, it's a growing community, and I think that people need to see this place open a bit more than 12 hours a week.
So why don't we do that as a follow-up motion? Let's deal with this. This is about the lease, and then you can do a follow-up to the library board to explore, you know, the need for expanded hours at that site. So why don't we deal with this one? Do you want to speak to this lease, or?
No,
you're good. Is there any questions on this? I have a question. I guess I'm going to direct it to Councillor Vale, who's on the library board. So we enter in these lease agreements all the time, most of the time at market rate. That's usually the direction. The Omemee Library pays about $11.43 a square foot for their lease. The Dunsford libraries, this lease is $17, just over $17 a square foot. So it's not at market rate, and I'm trying to get my head around what's the difference. Has that come through the library board for any part of a discussion? Why, especially with the reduced hours, which has nothing to do with the lease, I recognize that, but why are we paying more for the Dunsford lease than we are for the Omemee lease?
So it was discussed at the library board, the whole lease, and there was quite a discussion, because of the increases and the 3-year term as opposed to doing a 1-year term. At the end of the day, when the vote came, I think the rationale or for the majority around the table was that it was a reasonable increase to accept. Whether that's right or wrong, that was the board's take on it. But there was a lengthy discussion about A, the increase, and B, the 3-year term, and it wasn't unanimous by any means.
But it's not, I guess that's not the question really. It's not the increase. I know the increase from the previous leases, it's very minimal from what they've been paying in the past. I guess I'm trying to dig a little deeper and just say, why is $17 a square? I'm not questioning the need for the library or the lease. I'm just saying, why do we have such a discrepancy in the rate? Maybe that's more of a land management question than to the library board. We're negotiating these leases. Why aren't we negotiating them all at market rate?
And my apologies, I'm not too familiar with the Omemee to say what is included compared to this. We usually look for combined total rents from between about 10 to 18 per square foot, and this is sitting at about 17, so it is rather high. However, it does have the landlord paying for all the utilities direct, so that could affect it. Also, we found that in rural areas, we would have expected to see lower rents, but we're really not seeing that. So unfortunately, what we found is that the rental market seems to work in Lindsay, and in our larger centers, but not in the more rural areas, where you don't, the perception is you don't get the same value for money. So that is just what we're seeing. We've also noticed that with this landlord, we may be the anchor tenants at that location, and there has been pretty strict requirements to inflate the lease. Councillor Vale had spoken to the 2% annual inflation, which would be cost of living index type inflation, so that itself I don't have concerns with.
Okay. Any further questions? I'm not going to pursue it, but that's fine. Any further questions on the motion? Do you want to sum up? I think we're good. All in favor? That's passed. Thank you. That's our consent. Follow up, sorry. Go ahead.
I'd like to have this go back to the library board so they can look at perhaps increasing the hours, because we're paying a lot of money for this for 3 years. And I think we have to look at, for the size of the facility, we're paying a premium here for it. I'm not.
Okay, let's get your motion first,
Okay.
sorry. So your motion is to ask the library board to look at the expansion of hours in Dunsford over the term of this lease, or just
Sure.
the possibility of
Down the
expanded
road.
hours based on the need? Can we?
Based on the need, yeah.
If the need is there?
If the need is
Okay.
there, yeah.
Get a seconder? Councillor Yeo?
That's fine.
Go ahead, you're good?
No, I'm good, that's fine.
Call the question, all in favor? That's passed. Thank you. Okay, so we'll move into, that's our consent agenda, so petitions, we have none. We have other new business. Bylaws, are there any extractions from the bylaws? Seeing none, Councillor Elmsley?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Seymour Fagan, that the bylaws shown in section 13.1 of the agenda, namely items 13.1.1 to and including 13.1.10 be read a first, second, and third time, passed, numbered, signed, and the corporate seal attached.
Thank you. All in favor? That's passed. We have no notice of motion. We need a motion. No, we need adoption of the closed session agenda as amended. The closed session agenda be adopted as circulated with the following amendment. The addition of item 15.3.5 is an update on a personnel matter, a verbal personal matter about an identifiable individual under the Municipal Act 2001 S239 bracket 2 bracket B from Ron Taylor, Chief CAO. Item 15.3.6 is the cooperative request for 21966 OP, a verbal collection and transportation of waste and recyclables under section 239 bracket 1 bracket I, financial information supplied in confidence. If somebody will move that with those two amendments. Councillor Elmsley and Ashmore, all in favor? That's passed. Can I get a motion, please, to go into closed? Councillor Vale and Yo, all in favor? That's passed. Let's take a couple minutes and we'll go into closed session.
Make sure you ask for pecuniary.
Councillor Dunn.